Sometime in the year about 170 AD, at night in his tent on the front lines of the war in Germania, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman Empire, sat down to write. It may have been at dawn, at the palace in Rome, or perhaps he stole a few seconds to himself during the games. When and where it was doesn't really matter that much. What matters is that this man, at the time the most powerful man in the world, he sat down to write something both to himself and for himself. And that idea, it survives to us. What he wrote, it's a pretty simple quote, but basically he said, "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." And then Marcus, he concluded with these words that are, I think, a maxim for anyone. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And so this concept is critical to a philosophy known as Stoicism. It's part of an exercise in that philosophy known as turning obstacles upside down. It's basically the premise that we don't control what happens to us, but we do control how we respond to what happens to us. And in this way, there is no such thing as a setback or a problem or an obstacle. There's simply an opportunity to do something different. Maybe not what we thought, but what we needed, or not maybe what we would have preferred, but still good enough to work with. And so this is a philosophical idea, of course, but it's also a recipe for entrepreneurship, for personal happiness, for navigating a world that is inherently unpredictable. It's a philosophy for self-made individuals, for resilient and robust individuals, people who understand that they don't control these outside forces, but they do control their internal forces. And so the book for me is the idea of taking this ancient philosophy that is both timeless and modern at the same time and illustrating it with historical stories, whether we're talking Thomas Edison or Ulysses S. Grant or Amelia Earhart or Gandhi, Erwin Rommel, the German general, to Demosthenes, the Athenian orator. John D. Rockefeller's another story I tell in the book. Even Steve Jobs. I'm looking at great men and women who throughout history have responded to problems and obstacle and adversity, some great and some small, but they've all responded to it in the same way, which is that they used it as an opportunity. In fact, it was these difficulties that made those people great. And so look, all of us, we have something in front of us. We have an obstacle, an issue, a frustration, an unexpected problem. Or if we're not encountering it right now, we will in the future. Well, what if that thing wasn't so bad? What if embedded inside of it were certain benefits for just you? What would you do if that was your attitude? How much better would you be? And the reality is most of us, when we're faced with problems, we are paralyzed. We're stuck. We say, this is unfair. I don't want it to be this way. We look to blame someone. We look to investigate what caused it instead of dealing with the actual thing that's right in front of us. And so, of course, we have fear and frustration and confusion and helplessness and depression and anger, because those are the only emotions, those are the emotions that we've enabled and allowed ourselves to have. And what the Stoics do, and what I've broken this book down, is they sort of break the philosophy down into these three very important disciplines. The first discipline is perception. That's how you see the problem. If you decide to see it as horrible or unfair or insurmountable, it in many ways will be those things. That's not to say that Stoicism is the secret and how you see things magically makes them that way. We're still going to have to get into action, which is the next discipline. But the story you tell yourself about a thing has a great impact on what that thing actually will be for you. And so next, if you've told yourself that this thing, although problematic and unfortunate and upsetting, or maybe not even upsetting, that it is what it is, but that you can in fact do something about it, what's next is to do something about it. So that leads to the discipline of action. That's the desire to actually take action, to do something about your problem, to respond to it with creativity and with persistence and with some ingenuity, with using what you have to the best of your ability. These are the sort of the Stoicism in action, right? And then the final part, that's what we control about a given problem, right? Is the action we take about it. And then the sort of final third of the book is probably my favorite. This is the discipline of the will. Now, the will is looking at the parts of the things that we don't control, right? We don't control that we're all going to die. We don't control that people might try to hurt us in life, or they might try to screw us over. We don't control the fact that not only will that happen, but we're not always going to be prepared for it. So what do we do about that, right? So the discipline of the will is sort of building that inner fortitude, that strength. That's understanding our own mortality. That's understanding that there are things that are bigger than us, and there has to be causes bigger than us that we dedicate ourselves to. There's this great Stoic concept, amor fati, which in Latin means a love of fate. And the Stoics were about accepting and embracing and loving what happened to them, even if it was bad. I tell the story of Thomas Edison. His factory burned down, and his words to his son were, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." And what he was saying is like, look, crying about it isn't going to do anything, but I can at least enjoy it. And then the next day I can get back to work and I can do something about it. And that's in fact sort of exactly what he did. And so Stoicism is this idea that in everything that happens to us, there's a chance to practice excellence, to practice virtue, to improve our position in life. And this is an idea that is both very Western and very Eastern, right? There's also the Eastern saying, the Zen proverb, the obstacle is the path. And so the book is me combining these ideas. It's embracing, as Benjamin Franklin said, the things which hurt instruct, and focusing on, instead of how do we reduce adversity and obstacles in our life, how do we figure out how to take advantage of it? How do we learn how to seize the events that paralyze everyone else? And so I thought maybe I'd end. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius again that I think embodies the ideas in the book quite well. He said, "Objective judgment now at this very moment, unselfish action now at this very moment, willing acceptance now at this very moment of all external events. That's all you need." And so that is Stoicism in a nutshell, right? That's the three ideas: the discipline of perception, action, and will. And that's a recipe for greatness in whatever it is that someone's doing. It's this sort of Stoic optimism. It's how you turn what's in the way into the way. And that's the attitude I've tried to live my life by, because the people that I admire and the people that I respect and the people who have done great things throughout history, that's how they lived their lives.